The kitchen at Sapori d'Italia was a symphony of controlled chaos. Flames leapt from sauté pans, knives flew across cutting boards with rhythmic precision, and orders barked out in Italian and English created a percussion that would have been overwhelming to anyone who didn't belong there. But I belonged there. The kitchen was the only place in Chicago where I still felt like myself. My hands moved on autopilot, plating the osso buco with the kind of care that had earned me a reputation despite working in someone else's kitchen. Saffron risotto arranged just so, the veal shank glistening with reduction, a delicate garnish of gremolata that looked almost too pretty to eat. This was art. This was control. This was the one thing in my life that Jack Moretti hadn't managed to destroy yet. Table 9, Sophia. Marco's voice cut through my concentration. Our head chef, a 60-year-old Italian immigrant with hands like leather and a heart that somehow still had room for compassion, even for a sous chef with a target on her back. Special order. The gentleman wants your signature dish. Says he heard about your brassato al barolo from a friend. I glanced up from my station, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand. Table 9 wasn't visible from the kitchen, but I knew what it meant when Marco specifically requested me for a dish. High-profile customer. Someone important. Someone who could make or break a restaurant's reputation with a single review or whispered conversation. How does he want it? I asked, already mentally preparing the ingredients. However you want to make it. Marco's expression was carefully neutral, but I caught the flicker of something in his eyes. Warning, maybe. Or concern, he said, and I quote, "Let the chef decide. I trust her judgment." That should have been flattering. Instead, ice crystallized in my veins. Nobody trusted a chef they'd never met. Nobody requested a specific person's signature dish unless they knew something about that person. And in my world, in the world I'd been dragged into 3 months ago, when I discovered exactly who my boyfriend really was, that kind of attention usually came with a body bag. Sophia. Marco moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that couldn't be heard over the kitchen noise. You don't have to take this table. I can send Antonio's dish instead. Say you're not feeling well. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. I shook my head, forcing my hands to stay steady as I reached for the ingredients I'd need. Running wouldn't help. If someone had found me here, if someone knew I was the woman who'd walked away from Jack Moretti 3 months ago, with information that could dismantle his entire operation, then hiding in the walk-in cooler wasn't going to save me. I've got this, Marco. Thank you. He studied me for a long moment, his weathered face creasing with worry, then nodded once and returned to his station. Marco had given me this job when I showed up at his back door 6 weeks ago, desperate and skilled, and willing to work for cash under a name that wasn't quite my own. He'd asked 3 questions. Could I cook? Was I running from the law? Was I going to bring trouble to his restaurant? I'd answered yes, no, and I hoped not. 2 out of 3 truths. The trouble had found me anyway. My hands moved through the familiar motions of preparing the brassato, but my mind was racing through possibilities. Jack's enforcers finally tracking me down. The Russian syndicate he'd pissed off last year. The Chicago PD detective who'd been sniffing around, asking questions about Jack's money laundering operation. Or worse, the FBI agent who'd tried to recruit me as an informant before I disappeared. The beef braised slowly, wine and aromatics filling the kitchen with a scent that should have been comforting. I plated it with hands that trembled slightly, arranging everything with the precision that had become my armor. If this was my last dish, it would be perfect. Sophia. One of the servers, a college kid named Danny who didn't know anything about my past and didn't need to, appeared at my elbow. The gentleman at table 9 asked me to give you this before I bring out his meal. He handed me a menu, the leather-bound kind Sapori used for its premium customers, embossed with gold lettering that caught the overhead lights. I took it automatically, confused about why a customer would return a menu after ordering. Then I saw it. Someone had written on the inside cover in thick black marker, the letters large and unmistakable, bleeding slightly into the expensive leather. Bellini. My blood turned to ice. Bellini. The Bellini family. One of the 3 most powerful crime families in Chicago, and the one family that Jack had specifically warned me never to cross, never to approach, never to even think about too loudly, because they had eyes everywhere and mercy nowhere. Antonio Bellini had been murdered 4 months ago, shot 6 times in the head outside his daughter's wedding, a message from the Russians that had started a war still burning through Chicago's underworld. His son, Dante Bellini, had inherited an empire and a vendetta, and apparently he was sitting at table 9, eating in the restaurant where I'd been hiding, requesting my food specifically. He knew. Somehow he knew who I was, what I knew, what I could do to his enemies if I decided to talk. My hands were shaking now, the menu trembling in my grip. Danny was looking at me with concern, probably wondering why a simple menu had turned me white as the plates I was supposed to be using. Danny. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I need you to do something for me. Sure, Sophia. Anything. I grabbed a pen from the expo station, my mind working faster than it had in months. If Dante Bellini was here, if he'd found me, then I had maybe minutes before this situation escalated. Minutes to make a choice that would define whether I lived or died tonight. The menu was already marked. Adding to it would be obvious. But the plate, the beautiful plate I'd just finished preparing, sat in front of me waiting for garnish. I picked up the squeeze bottle of balsamic reduction, the one I used for artistic drizzles and final touches. My hand hovered over the white porcelain, and for a moment I saw two futures splitting in front of me like a fork in a dark road. I could send this plate out without a message. Pretend I hadn't seen the menu. Hope that whatever Dante Bellini wanted, it wasn't my life. Play dumb and pray. Or I could do something insane. Something that might get me killed or might save my life, depending on whether I'd read this situation correctly. Jack used to say I had instincts, that I could read people and situations in ways that even his most experienced men couldn't, he'd said. It was because I paid attention to details, to the small cues that others missed. I'd thought he was complimenting me. Later, I realized he was using me, training me to be another tool in his arsenal. But the instincts were real. And right now, they were screaming at me that this wasn't an execution. If Dante Bellini wanted me dead, I'd already be dead. He wouldn't sit in a public restaurant, wouldn't request my food specifically, wouldn't write his family name on a menu as a calling card. He wanted something. Information. Probably. Confirmation of what I knew about Jack's operation, about the Russians, about the power vacuum that was tearing Chicago apart. And maybe, just maybe, I could use that. My hand moved before my rational mind could talk me out of it. The balsamic reduction flowed from the squeeze bottle in careful, deliberate letters across the white porcelain, dark against light, unmistakable. Poison. One word. A warning, an accusation, a test. I didn't know which, but I knew. It would get his attention in a way that nothing else could. I handed him the plate, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Take this to table 9. And Danny, after you deliver it, I need you to stay away from that table. Don't go back for any reason. If he needs something, send Maria. Understand? Danny's eyes widened slightly as he looked down at the word written in balsamic across the carefully plated brasado. Sophia, is this some kind of joke? Because if this is poison, it's not poison, Danny. I promise you it's not. But I need you to trust me and stay away from that table after you deliver it. Can you do that? He hesitated, then nodded slowly. You're not in trouble, are you? I don't know yet, I answered honestly. But I will be if you don't deliver that plate right now. Danny took the dish and disappeared through the swinging kitchen doors. I stood frozen at my station, aware of Marco watching me from across the kitchen, aware of the other, cooks working around me, aware of every second ticking past like a countdown. What had I just done? I'd sent a message to one of the most dangerous men in Chicago, a man whose father's blood was barely dry on the streets, a man who commanded loyalty through fear and respect in equal measure. I'd written poison on his plate like some kind of cryptic warning or threat or desperate plea, and now I was about to find out if my instincts were right, or if I'd just signed my own death warrant. 3 minutes passed, the longest 3 minutes of my life, spent pretending to prep vegetables while my mind conjured 1,000 different scenarios. Gunshots, sirens, Dante Bellini's men dragging me out the back door into an alley I'd never walk out of. Jack found out where I was and finished what he'd started 3 months ago when I'd stolen his ledgers and run. Then Danny reappeared through the kitchen doors, his face pale, his hands empty. Sophia. His voice was barely above a whisper. The gentleman at table 9 would like to speak with the chef. Personally, he says it's about the plating. The plating. Code for, we need to talk about the word you just wrote in sauce on my dinner. Marco was already moving toward me, his expression dark with protective anger. Absolutely not. You don't go out there. I'll talk to him. Marco. I placed a hand on his arm, grateful for his loyalty even as I knew it was useless. If he wanted to hurt me, I'd be hurt already. Whatever this is, I need to face it. You don't owe anyone anything, Sophia, especially not customers who make demands. But I did owe people things. I owed Jack's victims some form of justice. I owed the FBI agent who'd tried to help me before I disappeared an answer about whether I'd cooperate. I owed myself a life that wasn't spent hiding in kitchens and looking over my shoulder. And maybe, just maybe, I owed Dante Bellini the truth about what his family's war with Jack Moretti had cost. I'll be fine, I lied, untying my apron with hands that had finally stopped shaking. Fear did that sometimes. Once you committed to a course of action, once you accepted that you were walking into danger, the fear crystallized into something colder and more useful. Resolve. I pushed through the kitchen doors into the dining room, and for a moment the transition was jarring. Soft lighting instead of fluorescent brightness. Quiet conversation and gentle music instead of shouted orders and clattering pans. The scent of expensive wine and fresh flowers instead of garlic and olive oil. Table 9 was in the corner, partially shielded from the main dining area by a decorative screen that offered the illusion of privacy. Exactly the kind of table that powerful people requested when they didn't want to be seen but wanted to be known, and there he was. Dante Bellini sat with his back to the wall, as all smart, dangerous men did, with clear sight lines to both the front entrance and the kitchen doors I'd just emerged from. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months, tailored perfectly to broad shoulders that suggested both gym time and the kind of physical work that didn't happen in an office. Dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and controlled intensity, a face that belonged on ancient Roman coins or Renaissance paintings of warrior saints. But it was his eyes that stopped me mid-step. Dark, almost black in the restaurant's dim lighting, they tracked my approach with the kind of focus that made me feel stripped bare, assessed, catalogued in the span of seconds. He was younger than I'd expected. Maybe 35, maybe younger. The photos I'd seen in Jack's files had shown a man hardened by violence and loss, but they hadn't captured the intelligence in those eyes, or the dangerous grace in the way he moved, setting down his wine glass and standing as I approached. Manners. Even mob bosses had manners, apparently. Chef. His voice was low, smooth, with the barest hint of an Italian accent that suggested heritage rather than birth. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. As if I'd had a choice. I stopped at the edge of his table, hyper-aware of the 2 men seated at nearby tables who weren't eating, weren't talking, just watching. Security. Of course, he had security. Men like Dante Bellini didn't go anywhere without people willing to die for them, or kill for them. You wanted to discuss the plating, I said, keeping my voice level despite my racing pulse. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile on a less dangerous face. The plating was exquisite, creative, even, but I found the message somewhat concerning. He gestured to the plate in front of him, where my brasado sat untouched, the word poison still clearly visible in dark balsamic across white porcelain. Would you care to explain, Chef Sophia Russo, why you felt it necessary to warn me about poison? The use of my real name hit me like a physical blow. Not the name Marco knew. Not the identity I'd been hiding behind for 6 weeks. My actual name, the one attached to 3 years of culinary school in New York, to my mother's death certificate, to the lease I'd signed with Jack before I understood who he really was. He knew. He knew everything. May I sit? I asked, surprised by my own boldness. If this was happening, if my cover was blown and my hiding was over, I might as well face it directly. Dante's eyebrows rose slightly, surprise flickering across his features before being quickly masked. Please. I slid into the chair across from him, every nerve in my body screaming that this was a mistake, that I should run, that sitting with Dante Bellini was like sitting with a loaded gun pointed at my temple. But running was exhausting, and I was so tired of being afraid. The poison isn't in the food, I said quietly, leaning forward so my words wouldn't carry to nearby tables. The poison is in the wine you're drinking. Someone in your organization has been paid to kill you tonight. They've been paid very well. And if I had to guess, they're watching right now to make sure you finish that glass. For 3 seconds, Dante Bellini didn't move, didn't blink, didn't react at all except for the slightest tightening around his eyes, a micro-expression that might have been surprise or calculation or deadly intent. Then he pushed the wine glass away from him with one finger, the movement casual, as if he'd simply decided he'd had enough to drink. Interesting claim, he said softly. And how, exactly, Would you know about an assassination attempt on my life? This was it. The moment where I either saved myself or condemned myself. Where I decided if I was going to keep running or finally pick a side in the war that had destroyed my life. Because, I said, meeting his dark eyes without flinching, Jack Moretti hired me to poison that wine 3 hours ago. He said if I didn't do it, he'd kill my sister. The one you have photos of in your intelligence files. The one currently living in Seattle, working as a nurse, completely unaware that her sister is sleeping with monsters. Dante's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between us, a charge of recognition and danger and unexpected respect. And yet, he observed, his gaze dropping to the plate between us, to the word written in balsamic, you chose to warn me instead. Why? Because I'm tired of good people dying for bad men's wars. My voice cracked slightly on the words. 3 months of fear and rage and grief suddenly threatening to overwhelm me. Because your father was murdered in front of his daughter, and that's unconscionable regardless of what business he was in. Because Jack Moretti is a cancer, and someone needs to cut him out before he destroys what's left of this city. I took a breath, forcing myself to continue before courage failed me. And because if you're going to kill me for refusing to poison you, I'd rather die having done one decent thing than live knowing I murdered a man I've never met for a monster I used to love. Silence stretched between us, heavy with implications I couldn't fully read. Dante studied me with those penetrating dark eyes, and I had the unsettling sensation of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in months. You used to love him, he repeated softly, picking up on the past tense, but not anymore. Not since I found out what he really was, what he really did. I glanced down at my hands, at the scars from years of kitchen work, at the faint tremor I couldn't quite control. Not since I realized that the man I thought I knew never existed. He was just a mask Jack wore to keep me compliant and useful. How useful? I looked up, surprised by the question. I was his cover. The pretty girlfriend with the normal job and the culinary ambitions. Someone who could attend charity dinners and business functions and make him look legitimate. Someone who could walk into places his usual associates couldn't without drawing attention. Understanding flickered across Dante's face. Someone who could deliver food to meetings. Who could observe and report without anyone suspecting a chef of being an informant. I didn't know that's what I was doing, I said quickly, urgently needing him to understand. Not at first. I thought I was helping his catering business. Thought he was proud of my skills. By the time I figured out what was really happening, I was already complicit, already carrying information without realizing it. And then, he prompted. And then I found his ledgers. The real ones. Not the ones he showed his accountant. I saw the numbers, the names, the operations, everything. I met his eyes directly, including the contract he put out on your father 4 months ago, the payment he made to the Russian syndicate to eliminate Dante Bellini before he could finalize the peace treaty between your families. Dante went very still. That dangerous kind of stillness that preceded violence or revelation, or both. You have proof of this? I have copies. Hidden somewhere Jack will never find them. Insurance, in case he decided I was more liability than asset, which he clearly had, since he was now trying to use me to murder Dante. The FBI has been very interested in acquiring those copies, but I don't trust them not to bury the evidence to protect their own assets. And you trust me? His voice was soft, deadly, the voice of a man who'd heard 1,000 lies and learned to identify truth by its weight. No, I answered honestly, but I respect you. Your father was trying to make peace, trying to end the bloodshed. Jack killed him to maintain chaos because chaos is profitable for men like him. You deserve to know the truth. You deserve justice. Justice, Dante repeated, something dark and satisfied crossing his features. Yes, I think we can arrange that. He raised one hand, a subtle gesture that brought one of his security men to the table immediately, whispered instructions in Italian, too low for me to hear. The man nodded and disappeared, presumably to do something with the poisoned wine glass, to secure the restaurant, to begin whatever chain of events Dante had just set in motion. Then he returned his attention to me, and the intensity of his focus was almost overwhelming. Sophia Russo, he said formally, as if we were sealing a deal rather than discussing murder and betrayal. I'm going to make you an offer. You can refuse, and I'll provide protection for both you and your sister until Jack is neutralized. That's my promise, regardless of your answer. I waited, barely breathing. But if you agree, if you're willing to help me destroy Jack Moretti from the inside, I can give you something more valuable than protection." He leaned forward, his dark eyes holding mine with terrible promise. "I can give you revenge. Real revenge, not legal justice that might take years and might never come. I can give you the satisfaction of watching Jack lose everything, the way he made you lose everything. What would I have to do?" His smile was cold, calculating, and somehow still managed to make heat curl low in my stomach. "Keep being his spy, but this time, you'll be mine instead. You'll report to me, you'll feed him information I want him to have, and when the moment comes, you'll help me take everything from him. His operation, his money, his reputation, his freedom. His life?" I asked quietly. "That depends on how much justice you think he deserves." Dante's voice was soft, but there was steel beneath it. "I don't force my associates to compromise their principles. If you want him alive to face legal consequences, we'll arrange that. If you want him to simply disappear, that can be arranged too. You get to decide, Sophia. This time, you have the power." Power. The word hung between us like a promise and a threat. I'd spent 3 months powerless, running, hiding, terrified of every shadow. Before that, I'd spent 3 years being manipulated by Jack, shaped into someone I didn't recognize. And now Dante Bellini, one of the most dangerous men in Chicago, was offering me the chance to take that power back. "Why?" I asked. "Why offer me this instead of just taking the information you need? You could force me to cooperate." "Because forced cooperation is unreliable," he answered simply. "And because you walked into this restaurant, saw my name, and chose to warn me instead of obeying Jack. That kind of courage, that kind of principle, is rare, especially in people who've been through what you've been through." He paused. "And because I keep my word, Sophia. If we do this, if we become allies, I will protect you and your sister, always. That's not a bargaining chip, that's a promise." I believed him. God help me, I believed him. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was instinct again, the same instinct that had told me to. Write Pison on his plate, telling me that Dante Bellini was dangerous but not to me, not if I stood with him instead of against him. "Okay," I heard myself say. "I'll do it. I'll help you destroy Jack Moretti." Something flashed in Dante's eyes. Satisfaction, yes, but also something else. Something that looked almost like relief, as if my agreement meant more to him than simple strategic advantage. "Then we have a partnership, Chef Russo." He stood, and I stood with him, suddenly aware of how much taller he was, how his presence seemed to fill the space around us. "My men will escort you home tonight. You'll find a phone in your apartment already programmed with a secure line to me. Use it whenever Jack contacts you, whenever you learn something relevant." "And Sophia?" "Yes?" He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy that probably cost more than my monthly rent, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "Don't underestimate your own value in this arrangement," he said softly. "You're not just an informant or a spy. You're a woman who survived Jack Moretti's manipulation and came out the other side with your integrity intact. That makes you dangerous in ways he'll never see coming." His hand came up, and for a heart-stopping moment I thought he was going to touch my face. Instead, he reached past me and placed something on the table. A business card, heavy stock with embossed lettering. My private number? Not the secure line, the actual one. If anything happens, if you're in danger, if Jack discovers what you're doing, you call that number. Day or night, I'll answer. You have my word. I picked up the card with trembling fingers, tucking it into my chef's coat pocket like a talisman. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Dante said. But there was something almost gentle in his voice. "We're about to start a war, Sophia, and wars have casualties. But I promise you this, you won't be one of them." As I walked back through the kitchen doors, I felt the weight of every decision I'd just made, settling onto my shoulders. I'd allied myself with a mob boss, agreed to betray the man who'd once shared my bed and my dreams, committed to a path that could end in triumph or tragedy, justice or death. But for the first time in 3 months, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. And I understood, finally, why Dante Bellini's enemies feared him. It wasn't his violence or his resources or his family name. It was the way he saw people, really saw them, and knew exactly how to transform their fear into fury, their weakness into weapons. Jack had made me a victim. Dante was going to make me a destroyer, and God help us all, but I was ready for it. The phone appeared in my apartment exactly as Dante had promised. I found it sitting on my kitchen counter when I returned home at 2 in the morning, flanked by 2 of his security men who'd driven me back from the gig. Restaurant in a black SUV with tinted windows that screamed organized crime louder than any words could. It was a sleek black smartphone, the expensive kind I'd never been able to afford even when Jack was showering me with gifts that were really just chains in prettier packaging. A single number was programmed into the contacts. No name, just D. I stared at it for a full minute, standing in my cramped studio apartment that smelled like garlic and fear, before the weight of what I'd agreed to truly hit me. I'd made a deal with a devil to destroy another devil. The mathematics of damnation, where 2 wrongs were supposed to somehow make a right. My regular phone buzzed. Jack's name flashed across the screen, and my stomach dropped like a stone into dark water. I grabbed the secure phone first, sent a quick text to D, Jack calling now. Then I answered my regular phone, forcing my voice into something approximating normalcy. Jack, Sophia, baby. His voice was smooth, affectionate, the tone he used when he wanted something. How was your shift? You must be exhausted. Long night, I said carefully, sinking onto my second-hand couch. Marco had me working the line during our busiest service in weeks. That's my girl, always working so hard. A pause, waited with expectation. Did you handle that special delivery I asked about? Special delivery, code for murdering Dante Bellini with poisoned wine. My mouth went dry. I handled it, I said, technically telling the truth. I had handled it, just not the way Jack intended. Everything went exactly as planned. Good, good. Relief flooded his voice. I knew I could count on you, Sophia. You're the only person I trust completely anymore. This city's getting dangerous, and I need to know you're on my side. The irony of his words would have been funny if they weren't so tragic. Jack Moretti, telling me the city was dangerous. Jack Moretti, who'd made the city dangerous. Jack Moretti, who'd just tried to use me as a weapon and had no idea I'd turned that weapon back on him. Always Jack, I lied smoothly. Where are you? Can I see you? Soon, baby, soon. I've got some business to wrap up, but I promise we'll celebrate properly when this is all over. Maybe take that trip to Tuscany you've always wanted. Just you and me, away from all this chaos. Tuscany. He'd been promising me Tuscany for 3 years. It was never going to happen. I understood that now. Men like Jack didn't retire to Italian villas with their girlfriends. They either died violently or ended up in federal prison, and they took everyone stupid enough to love them down with them. I'd like that, I said, injecting warmth I didn't feel into my voice. I miss you, Jack. This hiding, this separation, it's killing me. I know, sweetheart, I know, but it won't be much longer. Once Bellini is out of the picture, once the territory is secured, everything will go back to normal. Better than normal, I promise. Back to normal. As if normal had ever been anything but a carefully constructed lie. We talked for another 10 minutes. Jack feeding me reassurances and false promises while I made appropriate responses and felt my soul shrivel a little more with each lie. When he finally ended the call, I sat in the darkness of my apartment and wondered if there was a difference between being a victim and being a villain, or if they were just 2 sides of the same coin, spinning endlessly through the air, waiting to see which side would land face up. The secure phone buzzed. A text from D. Well done. He suspects nothing. My men will remain outside your building tonight. You're safe. Safe. Such a relative term. I wasn't safe from Jack's eventual retribution when he discovered my betrayal. I wasn't safe from the FBI if they decided to prosecute me for my involvement in Jack's operation. I wasn't safe from the moral weight of choosing revenge over principle. But I was safe from immediate physical danger, and in my world, that was as good as it got. I should have gone to bed. I should have tried to sleep before my next shift started in 7 hours. Instead, I pulled out the shoebox I kept hidden in the back of my closet, the one containing everything I'd stolen from Jack 3 months ago, when I finally understood what kind of monster I'd been sleeping beside. Ledgers, USB drives, photographs of meetings that were supposed to be secret, receipts for transactions that should have been untraceable, and most damning of all, the contract for Antonio Bellini's murder, complete with Jack's signature and payment confirmation to the Russian syndicate. Evidence that could destroy Jack completely. Evidence that could also destroy me if anyone realized how deeply I'd been embedded in his operation, even unknowingly. I'd planned to give it all to the FBI eventually. Make a deal, turn state's evidence, disappear into witness protection with my sister, and pretend the last 3 years had never happened. Clean, legal, and safe. But the FBI moved slowly. They built cases that took years, and sometimes those cases fell apart on technicalities or got buried under political pressure. Jack had connections in the police department, in City Hall, possibly even in federal law enforcement. He'd told me once, drunk and boastful, that he had insurance on everyone who mattered. Dante moved fast. Dante didn't care about technicalities or politics. Dante wanted justice for his father's murder, and he had the resources and ruthlessness to get it. The question was whether I could live with myself for helping him. My phone buzzed again. Not the secure one this time, but my regular phone. A text from an unknown number. We need to meet. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Address attached. Come alone, or your sister learns what you've been hiding. Ice flooded my veins. This wasn't Jack's style. He wouldn't threaten my sister. Wouldn't need to when he had 1,000 other ways to control me. Which meant someone else had found me. Someone else knew about my sister in Seattle and was using her as leverage. The Russians, maybe, following up on Jack's failed assassination attempt. Or the Morettis, Jack's cousins who'd never fully trusted me and might have discovered I'd stolen their records. Or worse, the FBI, deciding to apply pressure in ways that weren't technically legal but were definitely effective. I grabbed the secure phone with shaking hands and called the only number programmed into it. Dante answered on the first ring. Sophia. His voice was alert, focused, despite the late hour. What's wrong? I just got a text. Someone is threatening my sister, demanding a meeting tomorrow. I read him the message, my voice steadier than I felt. I don't know who it is. It's not Jack's style. Silence on the other end, but I could hear the sound of movement. Probably Dante getting out of bed, getting dressed, preparing to handle this threat with the same cold efficiency he applied to everything. Forward me the message, and the number. Don't respond to it. Don't go to that meeting. If I don't go, they'll hurt my sister. They won't get the chance. There was absolute certainty in his voice, the kind that came from having the power to make reality conform to your will. I'm sending a team to Seattle right now. Your sister will be on a plane to Chicago within 3 hours, and she'll be under my protection before sunrise. As for whoever sent that text, my people will trace it while you sleep. I can't sleep, I admitted, surprised by my own honesty. I can't stop thinking about what I've done, what I've become. Another pause, longer this time. Then, give me your address. What? Why? Because you shouldn't be alone right now, and because I don't trust that whoever sent that message doesn't already know where you live. His tone left no room for argument. Give me your address, Sophia. I'm coming to you. I should have refused. Should have insisted I could handle this alone, that I didn't need a mob boss coming to my apartment in the middle of the night. But the truth was I was terrified and exhausted and desperately craving the presence of someone who actually seemed to give a damn whether I lived or died. So I gave him my address. Dante arrived 23 minutes later, moving through my door with the quiet authority of someone who owned every space he entered. He wore jeans and a dark sweater, casual clothes that somehow still managed to look expensive and tailored. His hair was slightly mussed, and there was a shadow of stubble along his jaw that made him look younger, more human, less like the calculating crime lord, and more like a man who'd gotten out of bed in the middle of the night because someone needed him. Your security is abysmal, he said by way of greeting, locking my door behind him and engaging deadbolts I'd never bothered to use. That lock wouldn't stop a determined teenager, much less professional operators. I didn't expect to need Fort Knox, I said, defensively. I was trying to stay invisible. His dark eyes swept over my apartment, cataloging everything in seconds. The sparse furniture, the single suitcase in the corner that held everything I owned, the complete absence of personal touches that marked this as a hiding place rather than a home. Something that might have been sympathy flickered across his face. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. You can't stay here, he said finally. It's not secure, and now that you've made yourself useful to me, you've also made yourself a target. Jack's enemies will come for you. His allies might come for you if they suspect you're not loyal. And the FBI will definitely come for you once they realize you have information they want. Where am I supposed to go? Where? I asked, frustration bleeding through my carefully maintained composure. I have a job, Dante. I have rent. I have a life, such as it is. You have a death sentence waiting to be executed if you stay vulnerable." He moved closer, and I fought the urge to step back, not from fear, but from something else, something that hummed in the air between us like electricity before a storm. "I have a property in River North. Secure building, 24-hour security, no one gets in without authorization. You'll have your own space, complete privacy, and my men watching every entrance. A property," I repeated flatly. "You mean I'd be living in a place you own, under your control? How is that different from how Jack controlled me?" Dante's jaw tightened. "Because I'm offering, not demanding. Because you can leave whenever you want. Because I don't seduce women into thinking they have freedom when they're really just prisoners with prettier cages." He held my gaze. "And because unlike Jack, I'm telling you the truth about what this is. Protection in exchange for your cooperation. No lies about love or forever, or any of the other bullshit he fed you." The brutal honesty of his words landed like a slap and a caress simultaneously. He was right. At least he wasn't pretending this was anything other than a transaction. At least he respected me enough to be honest about the power dynamic. "What about my job?" I asked quietly. "Keep it. You need the cover, and frankly, your cooking is exceptional." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "But you'll commute from my building instead of this place, and you'll check in twice a day minimum. Morning and night, let me know you're safe." That's a lot of reporting for someone who's supposedly free to leave whenever she wants. Freedom and safety are often incompatible. Sophia, you can have both if you're smart about how you structure your life. But right now, you're neither free nor safe. At least my offer gives you one of those things. He tilted his head slightly. "Unless you'd prefer to take your chances alone?" I looked around my apartment, at the peeling paint and the water stain on the ceiling and the locks that couldn't stop anyone who really wanted in. I looked at the shoebox of evidence sitting on my coffee table, at the 2 phones that represented 2 different versions of myself, at the choice I'd already made when I wrote poison on Dante's plate instead of actually poisoning him. When would I move? Tonight. Now. He pulled out his phone, already typing. "I'll have movers collect your things in the morning. For now, pack what you need immediately. Clothes, documents, anything irreplaceable." "You're serious." "I'm always serious about protecting my assets." His eyes met mine. "And you, Sophia Russo, are now my most valuable asset. Jack thinks you're his spy. You're actually mine. That makes you a weapon I need to keep sharp and safe." A weapon. At least he was honest about it. And my sister? Already on a plane. She'll land at O'Hare at 6 a.m., and my people will bring her directly to you. He paused. "She's going to have questions about why armed men showed up at her apartment in the middle of the night and insisted she come to Chicago immediately. I suggest you prepare answers that don't involve the phrase mob boss." Despite everything, I almost laughed. "What am I supposed to tell her? Tell her you're in danger and needed her close. Tell her you've been working with law enforcement to build a case against Jack. Tell her you're in witness protection." He shrugged. "All of those things are technically true, just missing some relevant context about who's providing the protection." I grabbed my suitcase and started throwing in clothes, toiletries, the few possessions I hadn't been able to leave behind. Dante watched silently, his presence somehow both comforting and unnerving. When I picked up the shoebox of evidence, he stepped forward. "May I?" I handed it to him, watching as he carefully examined the contents. His expression remained neutral, but I saw the slight tightening around his eyes when he found the contract for his father's murder. Saw the flex of his jaw as he read the details of the payment, the specifications, the cold business transaction that had ended Antonio Bellini's life. "This is enough," he said quietly. "Enough to destroy Jack's operation completely. Enough to connect him to murders beyond my father's. Enough to ensure he never walks free again, assuming he lives long enough to face trial." "I wanted insurance," I explained. "Proof that I wasn't crazy, that Jack really was what I suspected. And eventually, I plan to give it to the authorities. You still can." Dante placed the box carefully in my suitcase. "Once we're finished with Jack, once he's neutralized as a threat, you can decide what happens to this evidence. Legal prosecution or permanent disappearance. Your choice, Sophia. I told you that. The fact that he was giving me that choice, that he wasn't simply taking the evidence and handling Jack his own way, meant something. I wasn't sure what exactly, but it felt significant in a way I couldn't fully articulate. Within 40 minutes, I was packed. Within an hour, I was in Dante's SUV, heading through Chicago's dark streets toward River North, and a future I couldn't predict. My old apartment, with its peeling paint and inadequate locks and memories of fear, disappeared behind us like a chapter ending. Dante didn't speak during the drive, but his hand rested on the center console between us, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Not touching, not claiming, just present. A reminder that I wasn't alone anymore, for better or worse. The building in River North was everything my apartment wasn't. Modern, sleek, expensive. The kind of place where doormen wore uniforms and remembered your name, where security cameras covered every inch of the lobby, where elevators required keycards to access residential floors. Top floor, Dante said, as we rode up in silence. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, full kitchen. The second bedroom is already prepared for your sister. The third is an office if you need workspace. How did you have time to prepare all this? I asked, confused. I only agreed to work with you a few hours ago. His smile was slight, but genuine. I've been tracking you since you left Jack 3 months ago, Sophia. I knew who you were, what you'd taken, where you were hiding. I knew you'd eventually become useful, and I've learned that preparation prevents complications. You've been watching me for 3 months? The violation of it should have angered me. Instead, I felt an odd sense of relief. If Dante had been watching me for that long and hadn't hurt me, hadn't used the information against me, then maybe his protection was real. Watching over you? He corrected. There's a difference. The Morettis were looking for you. The Russians were looking for you. Even the FBI had people sniffing. Around. I made sure none of them found you until I was ready to make contact. The elevator doors opened directly into the apartment, and I stepped into a space that looked like something from an interior design magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Chicago skyline in all its glittering glory. Hardwood floors, modern furniture in shades of gray and white, art on the walls that was probably worth more than everything I'd ever owned combined. This is too much, I whispered. This is necessary. Dante moved past me, turning on lights that revealed even more space, more luxury, more evidence of the vast gulf between his world and mine. Your room is through there. Your sister's is adjacent. Bathrooms are fully stocked. Kitchen has groceries I assumed you'd want to cook rather than order in. He'd assumed correctly. Cooking was the only thing that calmed my mind, the only activity where I felt truly in control. Dante. I turned to face him, needing him to understand. I can't pay for this. I can't pay you back for any of this. I'm not asking you to. His expression was serious, almost gentle. This isn't debt, Sophia. This is investment. You help me take down Jack Moretti, and in return, you get safety, resources, and eventually, the satisfaction of watching him lose everything. That's the deal. Nothing more, nothing less. And after? After Jack is gone and the evidence is handed over and your father's death is avenged, what happens to me then? He was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those dark, unreadable eyes. That depends on what you want to happen. Some people who work with me choose to stay in my organization. They find they prefer the clarity of our world to the hypocrisy of the legitimate one. Others choose to leave, to start over somewhere else with new identities and enough money to build whatever life they want. He paused. What you choose will be respected. You have my word. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe that. Someone in this tangled web of lies and violence actually meant what they said. That Dante Bellini, mob boss and heir to a criminal empire, was somehow more trustworthy than Jack Moretti, the man who'd claimed to love me while using me as a tool. Your sister arrives in 3 hours, Dante said, checking his watch. Try to get some sleep. You'll need your strength for the conversation ahead. He moved toward the elevator, and I felt a sudden, irrational panic at the thought of him leaving. Wait. He turned, one eyebrow raised in question. Thank you, I said simply. For getting Lily out of Seattle, for keeping your word about protecting her, for being honest with me about what this is. Something softened in his expression, a crack in the armor he wore so carefully. Get some rest, Sophia. Tomorrow, we start planning how to destroy Jack Moretti. But tonight, you're safe. Hold on to that. Then he was gone, the elevator doors closing on his departing figure, and I was alone in a luxury apartment that felt both like salvation and another kind of prison. I didn't sleep, couldn't sleep. Instead, I explored my new surroundings, marveling at closets bigger than my old bathroom, at sheets that probably cost more than my monthly rent, at the kitchen that made my chef's heart sing with its professional-grade appliances and impeccable organization. And I thought about choices. About the moment I'd written poison on Dante's plate instead of actually poisoning him. About the instant I'd decided that some moral lines were worth protecting, even if it meant throwing myself on the mercy of a man who probably didn't know the meaning of the word. I'd made my choice. Now I had to live with the consequences. Lily arrived at 6 a.m. exactly, escorted by 2 of Dante's security men who looked like they could bench press cars. She burst through the door the moment they opened it, her dark hair wild around her face, still wearing scrubs from what must have been her last shift at the hospital, her eyes wide with fear and confusion and relief all at once. Sophia! She threw her arms around me, and I held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her lavender shampoo and antiseptic that never quite washed off after a hospital shift. What the hell is going on? These men showed up at my apartment at 3 in the morning with a story about you being in danger and needing me in Chicago immediately, and they wouldn't explain anything else. And I've been terrified for the past 3 hours that you were dead or dying or, I'm okay, I assured her, pulling back to let her see my face. I'm okay, Lily. I'm sorry they scared you. I'm sorry I couldn't warn you, but there wasn't time. Her eyes narrowed, the nurse in her assessing me for injury or illness or deception. You've lost weight. You look exhausted. And this apartment. She glanced around at the obvious luxury surrounding us. Where are we? What's happening? And why did those men have guns? I guided her to the couch, suddenly aware of how impossible this explanation was going to be. How did you tell your sister, your only living family, that you'd accidentally fallen in love with a mobster, discovered he was a monster, stolen evidence that could destroy him, and then allied yourself with an even more dangerous mobster to guarantee your mutual survival? I need you to listen to the whole story before you react. I started carefully, and I need you to understand that everything I did to keep us both alive. Lily's expression shifted from confusion to something harder, more knowing. Jack. This is about Jack, isn't it? I told you 3 years ago he was wrong for you. Too smooth, too charming, too good to be true. You were right, I took her hand, needing the connection. About all of it. Jack wasn't who I thought he was. He's a criminal, Lily. Not small time, not white-collar fraud. Organized crime, murder, extortion, racketeering, and I was so stupidly in love with him that I didn't see it until it was almost too late. Her face paled. Oh God, Sophia, what did you do? I stole evidence, ledgers, files, proof of everything he'd done. And then I ran. I squeezed her hand. But people like Jack don't let you just walk away. He's been looking for me for 3 months. His enemies have been looking for me. And last night, someone threatened you to get to me. That's why those men came to Seattle. That's why you're here now. Someone threatened me? Her voice rose. Who? Why? Because you're my leverage. Because Jack knows I'd do anything to protect you, including things I'd never do for myself. I met her eyes. So, I made a deal with someone who could protect both of us. Someone powerful enough that Jack can't touch us, smart enough to use me to destroy Jack's operation from the inside, and ruthless enough to actually follow through. Understanding dawned on her face, followed quickly by horror. You made a deal with another criminal. Sophia, that's not protection. That's just trading one prison for another. Maybe, I admitted, but this prison comes with the promise that when it's over, when Jack is neutralized, I get to decide what happens next. And more importantly, you stay safe. No one will hurt you to get to me. I have that guarantee. A guarantee from a criminal. Lily stood, pacing across the expensive hardwood. And you believe him? You believe Jack too. The words stung because they were true. I had believed Jack. I'd believed his lies about loving me, about building a future together, about keeping me separate from his business. I'd been catastrophically wrong. This is different, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure it was. Dante doesn't pretend to be something he's not. He hasn't lied to me about what this arrangement is or what he wants from me. He's been honest in ways Jack never was. Dante. Lily stopped pacing, her expression shifting to something between resignation and concern. The man. Protecting us is Dante Bellini, isn't he? I saw the news about his father's murder, about the territory war that's been tearing Chicago apart. She looked at me with something like pity. Sophia, he's not protecting you out of kindness. He's using you just like Jack did, only with better PR about it. I know that, I said quietly. I'm not naive anymore, Lily. I know exactly what I am to Dante, a weapon he can use against his enemy. but at least he's honest about it. At least he's given me some choice in how that weapon gets deployed. Before Lily could respond, the elevator chimed. We both turned as Dante emerged, dressed impeccably in a dark suit despite the early hour, carrying a tray with coffee and what looked like fresh pastries from an expensive bakery. "Good morning," he said pleasantly, as if his presence in the apartment at 6:30 a.m. was perfectly normal. "I thought you might both be hungry." Sophia didn't sleep, and I imagine Miss Carter is exhausted from her unexpected journey. Lily stared at him, clearly torn between gratitude for the food and suspicion of the man offering it. Dante set the tray on the coffee table and straightened, offering his hand. "We haven't been properly introduced. I'm Dante Bellini. Your sister has agreed to help me with a business matter, and in exchange, I'm providing both of you with protection and security. I realize the circumstances of your arrival were alarming, and for that, I apologize. But I hope you'll understand that speed was necessary to ensure your safety." "Business matter," Lily repeated, her voice flat as she reluctantly shook his hand. "Is that what we're calling conspiracy to commit crimes these days?" A slight smile touched Dante's lips. "Your sister failed to mention that you were direct. I appreciate that quality." He gestured to the couch. "Please, sit, eat, and allow me to explain exactly what Sophia has gotten herself involved in, since she seems to be struggling with the explanation." We sat, and Dante settled into the chair across from us with the easy confidence of someone who owned the space, which, technically, he did. He poured coffee for all of us, added cream to mine without asking how I took it, and offered the pastries before leaning back. "Your sister is in danger because Jack Moretti, the man she was involved with, is a sociopathic criminal who uses people until they're no longer useful, then disposes of them," Dante began bluntly. "Sophia discovered this fact, stole evidence of his crimes, and wisely ran. But running isn't enough. Jack has resources, connections, and patience. He would have found her eventually, and when he did, he would have killed her. Probably slowly, probably painfully, to send a message to anyone else who might think about betraying him." Lily's hand found mine, squeezing tight. "Last night, Jack tried to use Sophia to kill me," Dante continued calmly, as if discussing the weather. "He gave her poison and instructions to put it in my wine. If, then she'd followed through, I'd be dead, and Jack would have eliminated his primary competition for control of Chicago's underworld. But Sophia didn't follow through. Instead, she warned me, and in doing so, she declared her allegiance. She had a choice?" Lily challenged. "Or did she just pick the lesser of two evils?" A valid question. Dante's eyes found mine, and there was something in them I couldn't quite read. "Sophia, do you feel you had a choice?" I considered lying, saying what Lily wanted to hear. But Dante had been honest with me, and that honesty deserved reciprocation. "I chose the devil who kept his word over the devil who broke every promise he ever made me. I chose protection for my sister over continuing to run and hide. I chose revenge over forgiveness." I met his gaze directly. "So yes, Lily, I had a choice, and I made it." Silence stretched between the three of us, heavy with implications and unspoken fears. Finally, Lily spoke. "What happens when this is over? When Jack is dealt with, when whatever plan you have plays out, what happens to my sister?" "That's up to her," Dante answered simply. "Some people who work with me find they prefer to stay, to continue in roles within my organization. Others choose to leave, to start fresh somewhere else with new identities and resources to build whatever life they want. Sophia will have both options." "And if she chooses to leave, you'll just let her walk away, knowing everything she knows about your operation?" "Yes. No hesitation, no qualification. I keep my word, Miss Carter. Always. It's the one thing that separates men like me from men like Jack Moretti. He lies, manipulates, breaks his promises whenever convenient. I don't. If I tell your sister she can leave when this is finished, then she can leave. If I promise to protect you, then you're protected. These aren't empty words. They're commitments I honor with my life." Lily studied him for a long moment, her nurse's instinct for reading people, working overtime. Whatever she saw in his face must have satisfied something, because her posture relaxed slightly. "Okay," she said finally. "I don't like this. I don't like any of this. But I trust Sophia's judgment, even when she makes terrible decisions about men." She shot me a look that was equal parts affection and exasperation. "So what now? I'm supposed to just live here and pretend everything's normal while you two plan whatever criminal enterprise you're planning?" You're supposed to go back to Seattle, Dante corrected. Continue your life as normally as possible. You're not involved in this, Miss Carter. You're simply collateral that needed to be secured. Once we've confirmed there's no immediate threat to you, you'll return home with a security detail that will remain invisible but present. Invisible security, Lily repeated skeptically. I have people who are very good at protecting assets without being noticed. You won't see them, but they'll be there. Watching your bud, apartment, your hospital, the places you frequent, making sure that if anyone tries to use you to get to Sophia, they fail. His voice hardened slightly, and making sure that anyone who does try understands the consequences of touching what belongs to me. I don't belong to you, Lily said sharply. No, Dante agreed, but your sister does, in a sense. She's agreed to work with me, which makes her mine to protect, and by extension, the people she cares about fall under that same protection. Consider it a fringe benefit of Sophia's employment. The way he said mine sent an unexpected shiver through me. Not possessive in the way Jack had been possessive, demanding, and suffocating, but possessive in a way that felt strangely protective, as if Dante had claimed responsibility for my welfare and took that responsibility seriously. Lily caught my expression and raised an eyebrow. We'd have words later, once Dante was gone. Words about the way I was looking at him, about the danger of and confusing protection with affection, about making the same mistakes with Dante that I'd made with Jack. But for now, she simply nodded. Fine. I'll go back to Seattle. I'll pretend everything's fine. But Sophia, she turned to me, you call me every day, every single day. I need to hear your voice and know you're okay. And if anything happens, if this man, she gestured at Dante, breaks his word or hurts you or makes you feel unsafe, you tell me immediately. Promise me. I promise, I said, meaning it. Dante stood, checking his watch. I'll arrange your return flight for this afternoon. That gives you time to rest, talk with your sister, and process this situation. My men will remain outside the apartment for your privacy. He looked at me. Sophia, we'll meet this evening to discuss next steps. 7 p.m. in the office down the hall. Until then, get some sleep. Both of you. He moved toward the elevator, and again I felt that irrational urge to stop him, to not be left alone, even with my sister, because something about his presence made the danger feel manageable. But I bit my tongue and watched him go, the elevator doors closing on his departing figure. The moment he was gone, Lily rounded on me. Okay, talk. And don't leave anything out. How long have you been working with him? And more importantly, when did you start looking at him like that? Like what? I asked, knowing exactly what she meant. Like he's not just your protector but something more. Like you're starting to trust him. Maybe even starting to care about him. She sat down heavily. Please tell me you're not falling for another criminal, Sophia. Please tell me you've learned something from the Jack disaster. I'm not falling for him, I protested, even as part of me wondered if that was entirely true. He's honest with me in ways Jack never was. He doesn't pretend to be something he's not. And yes, there's something compelling about him. But that doesn't mean I'm stupid enough to confuse business arrangement with real emotion. Lily looked unconvinced. Just be careful. Men like that, men with that much power and that much blood on their hands, they're dangerous in ways that go beyond the obvious. They make you feel safe, make you feel seen, and then before you know it, you're in so deep you can't see daylight anymore. She was right. I knew she was right. But I also knew that I was already in deep, had been since the moment I wrote poison on Dante's plate, and he responded by offering me partnership instead of punishment. The question wasn't whether I was getting in over my head. The question was whether I'd survive the drowning or learn to breathe underwater. Lily left on a 4 p.m. flight back to Seattle, escorted by 2 of Dante's men who looked like they could stop a tank with their bare hands. I watched from the apartment window as the black SUV disappeared into Chicago traffic, carrying away the last piece of my old life that still felt real and untainted. The apartment was too quiet after she left. Too big, too empty, too full of expensive things that belonged to someone else. I tried to rest like Dante had suggested, but sleep felt impossible with my mind racing through everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. Instead, I did what I always did when the world felt uncontrollable. I cooked. The kitchen was a dream, better equipped than most professional restaurants. I found ingredients in the refrigerator, high-quality ingredients that someone had stocked, knowing I'd need the comfort of creation. Flour, Eggs, butter, fresh herbs, vegetables that hadn't sat in a warehouse for weeks. Someone had paid attention to what a chef would want. I made fresh pasta from scratch, the rhythmic kneading of dough grounding me in something tangible. Made a ragu that would need hours to develop its depth of flavor. Prepared a simple salad with a vinaigrette that tasted like the summers I'd spent in my grandmother's kitchen. Before she died, before my mother got sick, before everything good in my life had been systematically stripped away. At 6:30, I plated 2 servings, assuming Dante would appear for our 7 p.m. meeting. The act of cooking for someone felt oddly intimate, and I tried not to think too hard about why I'd instinctively made enough for 2. At exactly 7 p.m., the elevator chimed. Dante emerged, still wearing his suit but with the jacket draped over his arm and his tie loosened. He looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before, as if the day had worn through his usual impenetrable composure. "You cooked," he observed, catching the scent immediately. Something shifted in his expression, a softening around his eyes. "You didn't have to do that." "I needed to do something with my hands," I admitted. "And you said we'd meet at 7. I assumed you'd be hungry." He set his jacket on the back of a chair and moved toward the kitchen island where I'd plated the food. For a moment, he simply looked at it, the carefully arranged pasta, the rich sauce, the attention to detail that marked it as more than just sustenance. "My mother used to make ragu," he said quietly. "Not often, because it took time and she was always working, but on fun days sometimes, when my father insisted on family dinners that felt more like business meetings with food." He glanced up at me. "She died when I was 17, cancer. My father remarried within a year to a woman half his age who couldn't cook and didn't care to learn." The revelation surprised me. Dante didn't strike me as someone who shared personal history easily. "I'm sorry. About your mother. It was a long time ago." But the way he said it suggested the wound hadn't fully healed, just scarred over in ways that let him function around it. "She would have liked you, I think. She always said the measure of a person was in how they treated food with respect or with carelessness." He picked up one of the plates and moved to the dining table, gesturing for me to join him. I brought my own plate and sat across from him, watching as he took his first bite. His expression remained neutral, but I saw the slight pause, the moment of recognition when taste buds registered something exceptional. "This is extraordinary," he said simply. "Marco was right to hide you in his kitchen. You have real talent, Sophia." "Thank you." The compliment warmed me more than it should have. My mother taught me. She said cooking was love made tangible, that every dish should carry the intention of nourishment, not just of the body but of the soul. Wise woman. She was, past tense, because cancer had taken her too, 4 years ago, leaving me with Lily and a mountain of medical debt that had made me vulnerable to someone like Jack's promises of security. She died believing I'd make something of myself. I'm not sure this is what she had in mind. Dante was quiet for a moment, eating slowly, thoughtfully. Then, "You're still alive. Still fighting. Still protecting the people you love. That's something. That's more than most people manage when their world collapses." We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. It should have been awkward, sharing a meal with a man who held my life in his hands. But somehow it wasn't. Maybe because we were both orphans in our own ways, both shaped by loss into something harder than we'd been born to be. "Your sister doesn't trust me," Dante observed, setting down his fork. "She's right not to. But I need you to understand something, Sophia. When I give my word, I keep it. Always. It's not nobility or morality, it's practicality. In my world, reputation is currency. If people believe I break my promises, I lose power. So when I tell you that you and Lily are under my protection, that's not a manipulation. It's a binding commitment." "Jack used to say things like that too," I pointed out. "He'd promise me the world, then deliver ashes." "I'm not Jack." There was steel in Dante's voice now, a flash of something that might have been anger or offense. "I don't lie to women I'm working with about what they mean to me. I don't pretend business arrangements or love affairs. And I sure as hell don't try to murder my business partners when they become inconvenient." "Then what am I to you?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Really? Beyond the business arrangement and the mutual benefit, what am I?" Dante leaned back in his chair, studying me with those dark, penetrating eyes. "Honestly, I'm still figuring that out. You're an asset, yes, a weapon I can use against Jack. But you're also," he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully, "you're someone who impressed me. Not many people could do what you did last night, recognize a threat, assess the situation, and make the choice to ally with a stranger, rather than follow orders from someone you'd loved. That takes courage and intelligence, both of which are rare. So I'm an impressive asset. You're a person I'm beginning to respect, he corrected, which is more than I can say for most people in my life. Respect has to be earned in my world, Sophia. You earned it by warning me instead of poisoning me, by caring about innocent casualties in a war you didn't start, by protecting your sister even when it meant risking yourself. His phone buzzed, interrupting the moment. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. Jack's moving faster than I expected. My intelligence says he's planning to consolidate power by taking out 3 of my key operations simultaneously, tomorrow night. Ice flooded my veins. He's escalating. He's desperate. He thought I'd be dead by now, that your poison would have worked. When I didn't die, he realized someone warned me. He doesn't know it was you yet, but he will eventually. Dante's gaze met mine. Which means we need to move faster than planned. I need you to contact Jack tonight. Tell him you're scared, that you think someone's following you, that you need to see him. Get him to meet you somewhere public, somewhere my people can observe without interfering. My heart pounded. If I contact him now, he'll be suspicious. I haven't reached out since the poisoning attempt. Tell him you heard rumors, that someone mentioned my name was still alive and you're panicking, that you're afraid he'll find out you failed to kill me. Dante leaned forward. Jack's ego is his weakness. He'll want to reassure you, to maintain control over you. He'll meet you to make sure you're still loyal. And then what? Then we confirm what he's planning, where his operations are vulnerable, who he trusts and who he suspects. You're my eyes inside his organization, Sophia. Right now, you're the only advantage I have that Jack doesn't know about. The weight of that responsibility settled over me like a heavy coat. What if he figures it out? What if I say the wrong thing or he notices something's different? Then you call me immediately and my people, extract you. His hand reached across the table, covering mine with unexpected warmth. But I don't think that will happen. Jack underestimated you for 3 years. He's not going to suddenly develop insight into who you really are now. His touch sent electricity up my arm, a sensation I tried to ignore. This was business. This was survival. I couldn't afford to confuse protection with attraction, even if Dante's hand on mine felt like an anchor in a storm. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll contact him tonight. Dante's hand squeezed mine once before releasing it. Good. Use your regular phone, not the secure one. Act natural. And Sophia? He waited until I met his eyes. If anything feels wrong during that meeting, if your instincts scream danger, you trust them. You leave immediately. Your life is worth more than any intelligence we might gain. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't just tactical concern about losing an asset. This was genuine worry about my safety. About me as a person rather than a tool. Why do you care? I asked quietly. Really? You've known me for less than 24 hours. He was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, my father used to say that you could judge a person's character in crisis. That pressure revealed who people truly were beneath the masks they wore. Last night, under pressure, you chose to save a stranger rather than follow orders from someone you'd loved. That tells me something about who you are. He paused. And I find myself wanting to protect who you are, not just use what you can do for me. The confession hung between us, raw and unexpected. I didn't know how to respond. Didn't know if responding was even wise. Men like Dante didn't show vulnerability without reason, and I couldn't tell if this was genuine emotion or another form of manipulation. I should make that call, I said finally, needing distance from the intensity of the moment. Dante nodded, standing and collecting his plate. He brought it to the kitchen, rinsed it automatically, a gesture so domestic and unexpected that it made my chest tighten. Then he returned to collect his jacket. I'll be in the office when you're ready to brief me on the conversation, he said, moving toward the hallway. Take your time. Make it convincing. After he left, I sat alone with my phone and the weight of what I was about to do. Calling Jack felt like stepping back into a nightmare I'd barely escaped. But Dante was right. Jack's ego would make him want to see me, to reassure himself that I was still under his control. I dialed his number with shaking hands. He answered on the second ring. Sophia. I was beginning to worry. You haven't checked in since the delivery. I'm scared, Jack. I let real fear bleed into my voice. Someone's been following me, I think. I think they know what I did. What you asked me to do. What are you talking about? His voice sharpened. Who's following you? I don't. I know. I just keep seeing the same car, the same faces. And I heard rumors at work that Dante Bellini is still alive, that he was at the restaurant that night and nothing happened to him. I paused, letting panic color my words. Jack, what if I failed? What if the poison didn't work and now he knows someone tried to kill him? Calm down, baby. Calm down. Jack's voice smoothed into the reassuring tone he'd used 1,000 times to manipulate me. Even if he survived, he doesn't know it was you. He doesn't know you're connected to me. You're safe, Sophia. I promise. I don't feel safe. I feel like I'm being watched constantly. I need to see you, Jack. Please. I need to know we're okay, that we're still on the same side. A pause, during which I could practically hear him calculating, weighing risks against benefits. Okay, we can meet. But it has to be somewhere public, somewhere safe. How about Grant Park? Tomorrow afternoon, 2 p.m., by the fountain. There will be plenty of people around, lots of witnesses. No one will try anything in broad daylight. Grant Park. Public, crowded, easy for Dante's people to observe without being noticed. Perfect. Thank you, I whispered, putting genuine relief into my voice. Thank you, Jack. I need to see you. Need to know this is all going to work out. It will, baby. It will. I've got everything under control. By this time next week, Bellini will be finished, and we'll be running this city together, just like I promised. We talked for a few more minutes, Jack feeding me reassurances and lies while I made appropriate grateful responses. When I finally ended the call, my hands were shaking and my stomach churned with self-disgust. I'd been good at playing the devoted girlfriend. Too good. I found Dante in the office, a sleek space with dark furniture and windows overlooking the city. He was on his phone when I entered, but ended the call immediately and gave me his full attention. Grant Park, tomorrow at 2, I reported. By the fountain. He thinks I'm scared and vulnerable and need reassurance, which is exactly what he wants you to be. Dante's expression was grim. My people will be positioned throughout the park. You'll have eyes on you at all times. If anything goes wrong, you'll extract me. I know. I sank into one of the leather chairs, suddenly exhausted. This is harder than I expected. Talking to him, pretending nothing's changed. He still sounds like the Jack I fell in love with, the one who was supposed to be real. He was never real, Sophia. That's the hardest truth to accept about con artists. They're so good at their roles that even they start believing the lies sometimes. I looked up at him. This man who'd inserted himself into my life with brutal honesty rather than sweet deception. How do I know you're real? How do I know this isn't just another con, better executed? Dante moved closer, crouching down so we were at eye level. You don't. Not yet. Trust has. To be earned over time. Through consistent action. All I can do is keep my word, keep you safe, and hope that eventually you'll see the difference between a man who uses you and a man who values you. And which are you? His smile was slight, sad. I'm using you, Sophia. Let's not pretend otherwise. But I'm also valuing you in the process. Both things can be true simultaneously. The honesty was brutal, but somehow more comforting than any lie could have been. At least with Dante, I knew where I stood. At least he respected me enough to tell me the truth, even when it wasn't flattering. Get some rest, he said, standing. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. Facing Jack, maintaining the performance, all while knowing you're actively betraying him. It takes emotional toll. You sound like you speak from experience. I do. He moved toward the door, then paused. My father once made me turn in my best friend for stealing from the family business. I was 16. Marco had been my friend since we were children, and my father ordered me to lure him to a meeting where he'd face consequences. I did it because family loyalty demanded it, but it taught me something important about the cost of choosing sides. What happened to Marco? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. He lost 2 fingers and his place in our organization, but he lived, and eventually he understood why it had to happen. We're not friends anymore, but we're not enemies either. Just 2 people who remember what it cost to survive in this world. Dante's eyes met mine. You'll remember what it cost to betray Jack, but you'll survive it. And eventually, you'll understand it was necessary. After he left, I sat alone in the office for a long time, watching the city lights twinkle below. Somewhere out there, Jack was planning his next move, confident in his control over me. Somewhere out there, innocent people were going about their lives, unaware of the war being waged in shadows around them. And here I was, caught between 2 powerful men, trying to navigate a path that might lead to justice or might lead to my own destruction. I'd wanted safety when I wrote poison on Dante's plate. Instead, I'd gotten something more complicated. Purpose, danger, and the terrible clarity that came from choosing which devil to serve. Tomorrow, I'd face Jack with lies on my lips and betrayal in my heart, and somehow, I'd have to survive the weight of it. Grant Park at 2 p.m. was exactly as crowded as Jack had predicted. Families with children, tourists taking photos, office workers on lunch breaks, all creating a tapestry of normal life that made our meeting seem almost innocent. I spotted Jack before he saw me, standing by the Buckingham fountain with his back to the water. He wore casual clothes, jeans, and a leather jacket that I'd always thought made him look like a movie star. His dark hair caught the sunlight, and for a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen for him. The dangerous charm, the easy confidence, the way he'd made me feel like I was the center of his universe. All lies, I reminded myself. Every word, every gesture, every promise. He turned as I approached, and his face lit up with what looked like genuine happiness. "Sophia, God, I've missed seeing your face." He pulled me into a hug, and I forced myself not to stiffen, forced myself to return the embrace, to press my face against his shoulder the way I used to pretend this was reunion instead of reconnaissance. "I've missed you too," I lied, pulling back. "I've been so scared, Jack, so worried that everything's falling apart." Hey. He cupped my face with both hands, his touch once familiar and now revolting. "Look at me. Nothing's falling apart. Everything's going exactly according to plan. But Bellini is still alive. The poison didn't work." Jack's expression darkened. "Yeah, I heard about that. Someone tipped him off. But don't worry, I've got other plans. By this time tomorrow, Dante, Bellini won't be a problem anymore." My heart seized. "What are you planning? Better if you don't know the details, baby. Plausible deniability and all that." He guided me toward a bench, away from the crowds. "But I need you to do something else for me. Something important." This was it. The reason he'd agreed to meet me. He wanted something. Anything, I said, and it was almost true. Anything to get closer to his plans, to give Dante the information he needed to stay alive. Jack glanced around, checking for observers. I knew Dante's people were out there somewhere. The businessman reading a newspaper, maybe, or the jogger doing stretches by the fountain, or the mother with the stroller positioned with a clear sightline, but I couldn't identify them specifically. That was the point. "I need you to go back to Sapori d'Italia tonight," Jack said quietly. "Marco's been asking about you, wondering why you've been scarce. I need you there, working, visible, when everything goes down, tomorrow." "Why?" "Because you're my alibi, Sophia. When Bellini's operations get hit, when questions get asked, I need to be able to point to my girlfriend working her normal job, living her normal life, completely unaware of anything illegal. You're my insurance policy." Of course I was. I'd always been his insurance policy, his veneer of legitimacy. "What's happening tomorrow, Jack? What are you planning?" 3 simultaneous hits on Bellini's key operations. His shipping warehouse, his financial office, his private security headquarters. All at once, coordinated perfectly, and all traced back to the Russians. Jack's smile was cold, calculating. By the time the dust settles, the Bellinis and the Russians will be at war, and I'll be the only game left in Chicago. Horror washed through me. Not just because of the violence he was planning, but because he was telling me this so casually, as if I'd be pleased by his cleverness, as if I was still his loyal accomplice instead of the woman planning his downfall. That's brilliant," I forced out. "When exactly?" 9 p.m. Right when the shifts change, when security is at its weakest. My people will be in and out in 15 minutes, and no one will connect it back to me. He pulled me closer, his arm around my shoulders. "This is it, Sophia. After tomorrow, we'll finally have everything we wanted. Power, money, freedom to do whatever we want. We can finally take that trip to Tuscany. Tuscany again. The lie he'd been selling for 3 years. I can't wait," I whispered, hating myself for how easily the deception came now. How simple it was to look into his eyes and lie, when once I'd believed every word he said. We talked for another 20 minutes, Jack filling me with reassurances and false promises while I played the devoted girlfriend who believed him. When we finally parted, he kissed me a long, possessive kiss that felt like violation and told me he loved me. I didn't say it back, couldn't force. Those particular words passed my lips, even as a lie. Jack didn't seem to notice, too caught up in his own triumph to register my hesitation. I walked away from him through the park, my skin crawling with the memory of his touch, and didn't stop until I reached the street corner 3 blocks away where Dante's SUV was waiting. I slid into the back seat beside him, and only then did I allow myself to shake. "You did well," Dante said quietly. "My people recorded everything. We have his confession about the planned attacks." 9 p.m. tomorrow, I managed through chattering teeth. 3 simultaneous hits: warehouse, financial office, security headquarters. "I know," I heard. He handed me a bottle of water, which I accepted with trembling hands. "Are you all right?" "He kissed me," I said. And then to my horror, I started crying. He kissed me and told me he loved me, and I let him because that's what I was supposed to do. But God, Dante, I felt like I was being assaulted by my own memories. Dante's jaw tightened, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. But when he reached for me, his touch was gentle, pulling me against his chest and letting me cry into his expensive suit. "He doesn't get to touch you again," Dante said, his voice low and lethal. "After tomorrow, Jack Moretti won't be in a position to touch anyone. I promise you that." I pulled back, wiping at my eyes. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't fall apart on you. This is business, and I'm supposed to be professional. You're human, Sophia, and you just had to face the man who manipulated you for years and pretend nothing had changed. That's not business. That's trauma." His hand came up, thumb brushing away a tear I'd missed. "Don't apologize for having emotions. Just use them. Let the anger and disgust fuel your determination to see this through." He was right. The crying Jag had actually helped, burning away some of the toxic feelings that Jack's proximity had stirred up. What remained was cold fury, a determination to ensure that Jack never hurt another woman the way he'd hurt me. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we prepare." Dante's expression hardened into something tactical, strategic. Jack thinks he's about to launch a surprise attack. Instead, he's walking into a trap. My people will be waiting at all 3 locations, and when his men arrive, we'll take them into custody. Not kill them, that would make them martyrs. But we'll capture them, get them to turn on Jack, and then we'll hand over everything to the FBI with enough evidence to ensure he never sees daylight again. "You're handing him to the FBI?" Surprise colored my tone. "I thought you'd handle him yourself." "I could, but you asked me not to kill him, remember? This way, he faces justice, legal justice, and you get to decide what happens to the evidence you've been collecting." Dante's eyes found mine. "I keep my promises, Sophia. All of them. The reminder that he'd listened, that he'd actually honored my request, sent warmth through my chest. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have to get through tomorrow night without Jack discovering the trap." His phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, his expression darkening. "And we have a complication." "What kind of complication?" "The kind where Jack's not as stupid as we hoped. He just put surveillance on Marco's restaurant. He's checking to make sure you're actually there tonight, actually working, actually providing his alibi." Dante looked up. "Which means you need to be there, cooking, visible, while my operation unfolds. If you're not, he'll know something's wrong. But if I'm at the restaurant, I'm exposed. What if Jack decides to tie up loose ends? What if he realizes I warned you and comes for me? He won't get the chance." Dante's voice was absolute certainty. "I'm putting my best people inside that restaurant as customers. You'll have protection at all times. And if anything starts to go wrong, if there's even a hint of danger, they'll extract you immediately." I thought about Marco, about the kitchen that had been my sanctuary, about the danger I'd be putting innocent people in by being there. What about the other staff? What about Marco? Already handled. "I spoke with Marco this morning," explained the situation. "He's agreed to cooperate not out of fear, but because he cares about you and wants to see Jack pay for what he's done." Dante paused. "Marco's a good man, Sophia. Better than he should be given the world he operates in. You know Marco." The surprise was evident in my voice. "Everyone in Chicago knows Marco Santini. He's been running that restaurant for 30 years, feeding everyone from politicians to mob bosses without judgment or involvement in their business. He's neutral territory, which is why he's survived this long." A slight smile touched Dante's lips. "He also makes the best osso buco outside of Milan, and my father used to take me there when I was a child. So yes, I know, Marco, and I trust him to help keep you safe." The revelation that Dante had history with the restaurant, with Marco, made me realize how small Chicago's underworld really was, how interconnected, how everyone knew everyone, and how my hiding place had never been as secret as I'd believed. "Tomorrow night," I said slowly, processing the plan. "I work my shift at Sapori while you take down Jack's entire operation. And then what? And then it's over. Jack gets arrested, his organization dismantles, and you get to decide what happens next. Stay in Chicago under my protection, or leave with enough resources to start over anywhere in the world." Dante's eyes held mine. "Your choice, Sophia." Just like I promised. The driver pulled up to the building in River North, and we rode the elevator to the penthouse in silence. I was exhausted, emotionally drained from the performance with Jack and the crushing weight of what tomorrow would bring. At the penthouse door, Dante paused. "Get some rest. I'll have dinner sent up." "And Sophia?" He waited until I met his eyes. "You were extraordinary today. The fear, the devotion, the way you played him, it was perfect. Jack never knew what hit him. I learned from the best," I said bitterly. 3 years of watching him manipulate people taught me how it's done. Maybe. Dante's expression was unreadable. Or maybe you're naturally talented at reading people and adapting to situations. That's not manipulation, Sophia. That's survival intelligence. Don't let Jack's influence make you think you're anything like him. After he left, I stood in the penthouse alone, turning over his words in my mind. Was I becoming like Jack, learning to lie and manipulate and use people for my own ends? Or was Dante right? Was I simply doing what I needed to survive in a world that had proven itself hostile to honesty and vulnerability? I didn't have answers. I just had tomorrow night looming ahead of me, a crucible that would either forge me into dead, make something stronger, or break me completely. Either way, there was no going back. I'd chosen this path when I wrote poison on Dante's plate. Now I had to walk it to the end, wherever that led. The day of reckoning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Sunlight streaming through the penthouse windows, the smell of coffee from the machine Dante had shown me how to use, the distant sounds of Chicago waking up to a Thursday that would end in fire and consequences. I dressed carefully for my shift at Sapori, comfortable kitchen clothes, my hair pulled back, the chef's coat Marco had given me when I first started. Looking at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. 6 weeks ago, I'd been running, terrified, broken. Now I was a weapon, loaded and aimed at the man who'd destroyed me. The transformation should have felt empowering. Instead, it felt like watching myself disappear into someone I didn't fully understand yet. Dante appeared at 7 a.m., earlier than usual, carrying breakfast he'd clearly picked up himself rather than having it delivered. Bagels from a corner deli, the kind with too much cream cheese and the warm, yeasty smell of fresh baking. A peace offering, or maybe a distraction from what lay ahead. "You didn't sleep," he observed, setting the bag on the kitchen counter. Not a question, a statement based on the evidence written on my face. "Neither did you." The shadows under his eyes matched mine, the slight tension in his shoulders betraying stress he'd normally hide more effectively. "No." He pulled out a bagel, handed it to me even though I hadn't asked. "I spent the night making sure every contingency was covered, every person in position, every potential failure point addressed." His dark eyes found mine. "I don't leave things to chance when lives are at stake, Sophia. Especially yours. I'm one life among many tonight. Your men, the restaurant staff, innocent people who might be in the wrong place at the wrong time." I said, down the bagel untouched, my stomach too tight for food. What if something goes wrong? What if Jack changes the plan or brings more people than expected, or then we adapt? Dante moved closer, his presence somehow calming despite the dangerous energy that always surrounded him. "I've been doing this since I was 22, Sophia. 8 years of managing chaos, anticipating threats, keeping people alive in situations that should have killed them. I'm good at this. Trust that." I do trust that. The admission surprised me, but it was true. In the short time I'd known him, Dante had proven himself reliable in ways Jack never had. I'm just scared. Not for me, for everyone else who might get hurt because I couldn't walk away from revenge. This isn't about revenge. His hand came up, tilting my chin so I had to meet his eyes. This is about justice. Jack Moretti has been destroying lives for years, trafficking, extortion, murder. If we don't stop him tonight, he continues, more victims, more families destroyed, more women used like you were used. You're not being selfish by wanting to end him. You're being brave. The way he said it, with absolute conviction, made me want to believe him. made me want to believe I was doing the right thing instead of just trading one moral compromise for another. "What time do you need me at the restaurant?" I asked, needing to focus on logistics rather than ethics. 4 p.m. Dinner service starts at 5:30, and you need to be visible, cooking, establishing the alibi Jack expects. My people will be positioned as customers starting at 4 different tables. 8 people total, all armed, all trained for extraction if needed. He paused. Marco knows the situation. He's cleared the staff he trusts and sent home the ones he doesn't. Everyone working tonight is either my people or his people. No civilians who don't need to be there. How did you get Marco to agree to this? To risk his restaurant? His livelihood? Something flickered across Dante's face. Respect, maybe, or old affection. Marco Santini is one of the few truly good men I've ever known. He spent 30 years feeding monsters like me and maintaining neutrality, but he's not neutral about women being hurt. When I told him what Jack did to you, what Jack planned to keep doing, Marco volunteered his help, a slight smile, and I promised him that after tonight, his restaurant would be permanently under my protection. No one touches Sapori d'Italia or anyone who works there. Ever. The promise was both beautiful and terrible beautiful, because it meant Marco's kindness was being rewarded, terrible because it bound him even more tightly to Dante's world. But maybe that was always the price of safety in Chicago. Maybe there was no true neutrality, just different degrees of alliance. We ate breakfast in silence after that, both of us caught in our own thoughts about the hours ahead. When Dante finally left at 8 to finalize preparations, he paused at the elevator. Sophia. He waited until I looked at him. When this is over, when Jack is in custody and the threat is neutralized, I want you to know something. You're not obligated to stay in my orbit. Not obligated to work for me or be useful to me or any of the things you might think you owe. You helped me stop a monster. That debt is paid. Whatever you choose after tonight is genuinely your choice. Why tell me this now? Because once tonight happens, once you see what I'm capable of when I'm not being diplomatic, you might want distance from me, and I need you to know that's allowed, that I won't hold you to anything beyond our agreement to stop Jack. His expression was carefully neutral, but I caught something in his eyes that looked almost like regret. I don't want you to feel trapped by gratitude or fear or any other emotion. I want you to be free, even if that freedom means leaving. Before I could respond, he was gone. The elevator doors, closing on his departing figure. I stood alone in the penthouse, turning over his words in my mind. Why would he offer me an out now, after everything? Why give me permission to leave when he could easily keep me bound through continued threats or dependency? Unless Dante actually meant what he'd been saying all along. Unless his word really was something he honored, even when it worked against his interests. The thought was both comforting and terrifying in its implications. The afternoon crawled by with excruciating slowness. I tried to rest, tried to prepare mentally for the performance ahead, but my mind kept racing through scenarios. What if Jack discovered the trap? What if his men came to the restaurant instead of the planned targets? What if someone innocent got caught in the crossfire? At 3:30, Dante's driver appeared to take me to Sapori d'Italia. The drive through Chicago's streets felt surreal, watching normal people live normal lives while I headed toward a confrontation that could end in violence, arrest, or both. Marco was waiting when I arrived, his weathered face creasing with concern when he saw me. Sophia Piccolina. He pulled me into a brief, fierce hug. You look like you haven't slept in days. I haven't, really. I returned the embrace, grateful for his solid presence. Marco, I'm so sorry for bringing this to your door, for putting you and your restaurant at risk. Bah. He waved a dismissive hand. I've been feeding criminals for 30 years. About time I did something useful with that particular skill set. His expression sobered. Besides, what Jack did to you. What he's been doing to other women, that's not something a decent man ignores. Bellini explained everything. You did the right thing, asking for help. Did I? Sometimes I'm not sure there's a right thing in any of this. Just different degrees of wrong. Marco cupped my face with both hands, his calloused palms warm against my cheeks. Listen to me. You are a good person, Sophia Russo. Good people sometimes have to make hard choices to stop bad people from winning. That doesn't make you bad. That makes you human. He released me, stepping back. Now come, let's cook. Let's make something beautiful while the world around us burns. The kitchen felt different, knowing what was coming. Every knife I picked up, every flame I ignited, every order I prepared, felt weighted with significance. I was establishing Jack's alibi while simultaneously helping to destroy him. The contradiction should have torn me apart. Instead, it focused me. I cooked with precision that bordered on obsessive. Each dish perfect. Each plate a work of art. Each moment documented by the security cameras Marco had allowed Dante to install without the other staff knowing. Evidence that I was here, working, innocent of whatever was about to unfold across the city. Dante's people arrived at 6 p.m. exactly, filtered in over 20 minutes so their appearance seemed natural. I recognized one from the SUV, another from the night at the park. They looked like ordinary customers, business professionals, a couple celebrating an anniversary, a group of friends meeting for dinner, but I saw the way they positioned themselves, the subtle glances toward exits, the vigilance beneath the casual appearances. At 7 p.m., my regular phone buzzed. A text from Jack. "How's work? Everything normal?" I sent back. "Crazy busy. Marco has me running the line solo tonight. Miss you." His response. "Miss you too, baby. Tomorrow this will all be over and we can finally be together properly. I promise." Another promise he'd never keep. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and returned to cooking, my hands steady even as my heart raced. 8 p.m. Service was in full swing, orders coming in faster than I could plate them. The kitchen, a controlled chaos that should have been stressful, but instead felt comforting. This was what I knew, what I could control. In here, with fire and steel, and ingredients that responded predictably to heat and skill, the outside world couldn't touch me. 8:30. Marco appeared at my station, his expression carefully neutral but his eyes holding a message. Soon. 8:45. I plated a perfect ossobuco, garnished it with gremolata that looked like art, sent it out to table 7 where one of Dante's men sat with a woman who might have been his wife or might have been another operative. Hard to tell in this world where everyone wore masks. 9 p.m. The explosion hit like thunder, distant but unmistakable. The whole restaurant shook slightly, glasses rattling on tables, conversations stopping mid-sentence as everyone looked toward the windows facing east. What was that? One of the servers, Danny, appeared in the kitchen doorway. Did something blow up? Probably just construction, Marco said smoothly, though his eyes met mine with grim knowledge. City's always tearing something down. Get back to your tables, Danny. We have customers waiting. My phone buzzed. Not my regular phone, the secure one hidden in my locker. I couldn't check it here, not with staff and customers and witnesses everywhere, but I knew what it would say. Phase 1 complete, the warehouse. Jack's men had walked into Dante's trap, and whatever had exploded was part of the takedown. I forced my hands to stay steady, forced myself to keep cooking even as sirens wailed in the distance. 9:15. Another text on my regular phone from Jack. Something's happening. Can't reach my people at the warehouse. If anyone asks, you've been at work all night, right? Of course, I sent back. Marco can confirm. Is everything okay? No response. Jack was busy trying to figure out what had gone wrong, why his carefully planned attack had somehow blown up in his face, literally, if the explosion was any indication. 9:30. Police cars screamed past the restaurant, heading south toward the financial district. More of Jack's operation crumbling, more of Dante's trap springing shut. 9:45. The secure phone buzzed again. I made an excuse about needing the bathroom, checked it in the staff area where security cameras didn't reach. All 3 locations secured. Minimal casualties. Jack's men in custody. FBI en route. You're safe. Relief, and something else. Something like grief washed through me. It was done. Jack's empire was falling, and I'd helped push it. The man I'd once loved, once trusted with my future, was finished. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. When I returned to the kitchen, Marco took one look at my face and pulled me aside. It's done, isn't it? Bellini's operation? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Good. He squeezed my shoulder. Finish your shift, Piccolina. Maintain the appearance. And then go home and sleep for a week. You've earned it. But I couldn't finish my shift. At 10:15, as I was plating the last orders of the night, the restaurant's front door burst open. Not police, not FBI, not customers, Jack. He looked wild, desperate, his carefully maintained appearance shattered. His hair was disheveled, his clothes torn, blood on his jacket that might have been his or might have belonged to someone else. His eyes swept the restaurant frantically before landing on me through the kitchen window. Sophia. He started toward the kitchen, and immediately 3 of Dante's people stood, hands moving inside jackets toward weapons. Marco stepped into Jack's path, his bulk and authority stopping the younger man's advance. "Mr. Moretti, your girlfriend is working. If you need to speak with her, it can wait until her shift ends." "Get out of my way, old man." Jack's voice was raw, dangerous. "I need to talk to Sophia. Now." "Jack." I emerged from the kitchen, acutely aware of Dante's people positioned strategically throughout the restaurant, of the other diners who'd stopped eating to watch the drama, of Marco's tense posture ready to intervene. "What's wrong? What happened?" "What happened?" He laughed, the sound edging toward hysteria. "What happened is someone knew, Sophia. Someone knew exactly where my people would be and when. Someone set a trap, and my entire operation just got dismantled in 90 minutes. His eyes burned into mine, and I'm trying to figure out who the hell betrayed me. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my expression confused, concerned. "I don't understand. Your business, the legitimate business. What does that have to do with don't play dumb?" Jack moved closer, and I saw one of Dante's men shift position slightly, ready to intervene. Someone talked. Someone told Bellini exactly what I was planning, and the only people who knew were me and... He stopped, realization dawning across his face like a terrible sunrise. I told you everything yesterday in the park. Jack, you're scaring me." I let real fear color my voice because I was scared not of Jack physically, not with protection surrounding me, but scared of this moment, of watching him finally understand what I'd done. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've been here all night, cooking. Marco can tell you. Danny can tell you. Everyone here saw me. You warned him." Jack's voice dropped to something cold and deadly. "You warned Dante Bellini. That's why he didn't die from the poison. That's why he knew about tonight's operations. You've been working with him against me this whole time. That's insane." I forced conviction into my voice even as my hands trembled. "Why would I work with someone I don't even know against you? You're the one I love, Jack. You're the one I've been waiting for. Prove it." He pulled out a gun, small, black, deadly, and pointed it not at me, but at Marco. At the innocent man who'd given me sanctuary, who'd helped Dante protect me, who'd done nothing but feed people for 30 years. "Prove you're loyal. Prove you're still mine. Call Bellini. Tell him you have information about his father's murder. Get him to meet you here, alone, and I'll know you're telling the truth." The restaurant erupted. Dante's people drew weapons, training them on Jack. Other diners screamed, scrambling for exits. Marco stood perfectly still, his eyes on mine, silently telling me not to do anything stupid. "Put the gun down, Jack." My voice was steadier than I felt. "You're surrounded. Look around. These people aren't random customers. They're Bellini's security. You walked into a trap just like your men did tonight." Jack's face went white as he realized the truth. His eyes swept the restaurant, taking in the drawn weapons, the professional stances, the cold faces of people who killed for a living. His gun wavered slightly, still pointed at Marco but clearly understanding the situation was hopeless. "You really did betray me," he whispered, and for a moment, he sounded like the man I'd fallen in love with. Lost, hurt, almost human. "After everything I gave you, everything we had together, you chose them over me. You gave me lies, Jack. You gave me 3 years of manipulation, dressed up as love. And what we had together was never real, just you using me as a tool and a cover story." I moved closer despite the gun, despite the danger, because I needed him to hear this, needed him to understand what he'd done. "I didn't choose them over you. I chose myself. I chose survival. I chose to stop being your victim. I loved you." His voice cracked. "I actually loved you, Sophia. You were the only real thing in my life." "No." I shook my head. "You loved having me. You loved controlling me. You loved using me. But you never loved me, Jack. Because love doesn't manipulate or deceive or leave someone with nothing when it becomes inconvenient." The gun lowered slightly, Jack's arm weakening under the weight of too many weapons trained on him, and the crushing realization that he'd lost everything. "What happens now? Your new friends execute me right, here in front of witnesses?" "No." Dante's voice cut through the tension, calm and authoritative. He'd appeared in the restaurant's entrance, flanked by more security, looking impeccable despite the chaos of the night. "What happens now is you drop the weapon, place your hands behind your head, and wait for the FBI agents who are approximately 90 seconds away. You face legal consequences for your crimes. You go to prison for the rest of your life. That's what happens now, Jack. Prison. Jack laughed bitterly. At least execution would be quicker. You know what they do to people like me in federal prison? To people who talk too much, who made too many enemies? You should have thought about that before you started building an empire on other people's suffering. Dante moved closer, positioning himself between Jack and me, a gesture of protection I hadn't asked for but appreciated anyway. Drop the gun, Jack. This ends one of two ways. You surrender peacefully and live to see a trial, or my people drop you where you stand, and I tell the FBI you were threatening civilians. Your choice, but you have 10 seconds to make it. The sirens were louder now, close enough that flashing lights reflected off the restaurant's windows. Jack looked at me one last time, his expression cycling through anger, betrayal, and finally something that might have been acceptance. I really did love you, he said quietly. That's the worst part. For 3 years, I lied about everything else, but that one thing was real. Then he dropped the gun, placed his hands behind his head, and sank to his knees as FBI agents burst through the door. I watched them cuff him, read him his rights, drag him toward a future of concrete walls and appeals that would never succeed. Watched the man I'd once planned to marry disappear into custody, and felt nothing but exhausted relief. Dante's hand found the small of my back, steady and warm. It's over, Sophia. You're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore. I know, but I couldn't take my eyes off Jack as they loaded him into a police car. I think part of me wanted him to be redeemable, wanted there to be something genuine beneath all the lies. Maybe there was. Dante's voice was soft. Maybe he really did love you in whatever broken way men like him understand love. But that doesn't excuse what he did. Love isn't absolution, Sophia. It's not a get-out-of-jail-free card for cruelty. He was right. I knew he was right. But watching Jack disappear into the back of that police car still felt like watching part of my past die, and grief for what I'd thought we had coexisted uncomfortably with relief that it was finally over. The FBI agents wanted statements from everyone. Me, Marco, Dante's people, the other staff. We gave them carefully constructed truths that painted Dante as a concerned business owner who'd received information about threats to his operations. Me as an innocent chef who'd been manipulated by Jack and without knowing his real business. Marco as a restaurant owner caught in the crossfire. All technically true. All carefully omitting the parts that would complicate the narrative. It was 3 a.m. before the FBI finally let us leave. Dante's driver took me back to the penthouse, with Dante beside me in the back seat. We didn't speak during the drive. I was too exhausted for words, too wrung out emotionally to process everything that had happened. At the penthouse, Dante followed me inside instead of leaving like he usually did. I didn't question it, didn't have the energy to ask why. I just moved toward the bedroom, desperate for sleep that might finally come now that Jack was gone. Sophia. Dante's voice stopped me at the hallway. What you did tonight facing Jack, maintaining composure when he had a gun on your friend, telling him the truth about what he'd done to you that took courage most people never find. I was terrified the entire time. I know, but you did. It anyway. That's what courage is. He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. And what you said to him, about choosing yourself instead of choosing sides between men, that was exactly right. I hope you remember that going forward. Going forward? I turned to face him fully. You mean when I decide whether to stay or leave? Yes. His dark eyes held mine. Jack's gone. The threat's neutralized. You have the freedom to choose your next steps without coercion or fear. I meant what I said this morning. You don't owe me anything, Sophia. You helped me stop a monster. We're even. I studied him in the dim light of the penthouse. This man who'd inserted himself into my life with brutal honesty and unexpected protection, who'd kept every promise he'd made, who'd given me weapons to fight back instead of just fighting for me, who was now offering me genuine freedom when he could easily have bound me tighter. What if I'm not ready to decide yet? I asked. What if I need time to figure out who I am when I'm not running or hiding or playing a role? Then take that time. A slight smile touched his lips. The penthouse is yours for as long as you need it. Your job at Sapori is still there if you want it. And if you decide you want to work with me, in whatever capacity feels right, that option exists too. No pressure, no timeline, just options. Why? The question I'd asked before, but needed to hear answered again. Why offer me all this when you could just walk away now that you've gotten what you needed? Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then, because somewhere between you warning me about poison and you facing down your ex with more courage than most of my soldiers show in combat, I stopped seeing you as an asset and started seeing you as someone I respect. Someone I care about, if I'm being completely honest. He held up a hand before I could respond. I'm not confessing love or asking for anything in return. I'm just being honest about why I want you to have genuine choices. Because people I care about deserve agency, not manipulation. The confession hung between us, vulnerable and unexpected from a man who'd built his life on control and power. I need to sleep, I said finally. Not because I didn't want to respond, but because I needed time to process what he'd just said. What it meant, if anything, beyond face value. Of course. He moved toward the elevator. Rest, Sophia. Tomorrow, or whenever you wake up, the world will look different. Better, I hope. After he left, I stood in the silent penthouse and thought about choices. About the choice I'd made to warn Dante instead of poisoning him. About the choice to betray Jack instead of staying loyal to a lie. About the choice ahead of me now to stay in Dante's orbit or leave it, to remain in Chicago or disappear somewhere new, to be Sophia Russo or become someone else entirely. For the first time in 3 years, the choices were actually mine. Not Jack's, not Dante's, not dictated by fear or survival or desperation. Just mine. The weight of that freedom was almost as terrifying as the captivity had been. Sophia Russo, a talented chef hiding in Chicago after discovering her boyfriend Jack Moretti's true identity as a ruthless criminal, finds herself trapped between two dangerous men when Jack orders her to poison mob boss Dante Bellini at an upscale restaurant. Instead of following through, Sophia writes poison on Dante's plate in balsamic reduction, a desperate warning that changes everything. Dante, the powerful heir to the Bellini crime family, recognizes her courage and offers an alternative. Work with him to destroy Jack's empire, and in return, receive genuine protection for herself and her sister Lily. Unlike Jack, who manipulated Sophia with false promises of love while using her as cover for his criminal operations, Dante offers brutal honesty. He doesn't pretend their arrangement is anything but transactional, her intelligence and inside, and knowledge in exchange for safety and resources. But he also keeps his word, moving Sophia into a secure penthouse and immediately extracting her sister from Seattle when Jack's enemies threaten her. As Sophia navigates her new role as double agent, she discovers the evidence she'd stolen from Jack months earlier, including proof that Jack orchestrated the murder of Dante's father, Antonio Bellini. The revelation deepens her resolve to see Jack face justice, even as she struggles with the moral weight of her betrayal. The tension escalates when Jack demands a meeting, still believing Sophia is his loyal girlfriend. She plays her part perfectly, gathering intelligence about his planned attacks on Dante's operations while dying inside from his touch and lies. Dante's men record everything, turning Jack's confession into the evidence needed to destroy him. The climax unfolds at Sapori d'Italia, where Sophia works her shift, providing Jack's alibi while Dante dismantles Jack's organization across Chicago. When Jack discovers the betrayal and confronts Sophia at gunpoint in the restaurant, she finally tells him the truth. She chose herself over both of them, chose survival over victimhood. Jack is arrested, his empire fallen, and Sophia faces an unexpected choice. Dante offers her genuine freedom to stay or leave, admitting he's come to care about her beyond her usefulness. For the first time in years, Sophia's future is truly her own to decide. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.